Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are talking about The Many Faces of Dean Winchester, Part 3. That's right, there are so many alternate Deans, it's taken 3 episodes to get through it. But before we jump in, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Wicker, and I'm a latecomer to the Supernatural fandom, but I dived right down that rabbit hole. I'm a former journalist and editor. Well, I'm still an editor, and I edit books for people, and I help people write their books, and I just am an unabashed Dean girl.
Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I've been a Supernatural fan since the pilot aired originally, so that makes me older than dirt as well as a fan. That's it.
Elektra.
I'm a writer and an editor, and like Melissa, I've been with Supernatural since the pilot aired. And you know, what better thing to be than a Supernatural fan?
This is true. Carole.
I've been a fan since episode 3 of season 1, and that was when I was already old enough to be y'all's mother. So,
and I write in urban fantasy and worlds that Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I came late to the party like Anne, came in season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months. And it's been nonstop Winchester since then. So we have gone through a lot of different Deans over the couple of episodes so far, but there are still more Deans to go. So let's start with our alternate universe Deans and the Richchesters. We've got Sam with his man bun, don't touch the hair, and we've got No Socks Dean. And their little Prius.
No, it's a Fiat. It's a Fiat.
It's a Fiat. There you go.
Yeah.
So how delicious is that Dean? Anne, start us off.
Well, he's much more of a fashion plate to start off with than our Dean, than normal Dean, we'll say. And he wears jewelry, and he is very almost prissy in a way. But he's also, it was interesting to me to see the transition when they got them out of the wall, and then they were to be the decoys in case Chuck checked in. And he really adapted to the Dean way of life much more than that Sam adapted to the bunker way of life. And it was amusing to me to see him call Sam Samuel. Mm-hmm. But just that whole transition that he made. And then at the very end, although there is some, I can't figure out exactly when they drove the car, but when he implied that he had driven Baby, that was the last straw for regular Dean. And anyway, I thought they did such a good job contrasting that Jensen did a great job contrasting those two characters.
Okay, Melissa.
First, ditto everything Anne said. I thought that Dean's relationship with his father, Richchester's Dean had a very different relationship with John than clearly our Dean did. And all those subtle little hints and like, here's to Dad. Yeah, it was very strange. And it was amusing. And Jensen did a really good job of selling it that here's Dad. And, you know, they're two spoiled rich boys that, you know, daddy spoils, but they still have to toe the line. And I thought it was just an interesting, the way Jensen played it was an interesting twist.
Okay, Elektra?
I was going to bring up the relationship with dad, which was nice to see. Also the fact that both of them, in fact, managed to make being squeezed into that little tiny car look completely natural and comfortable, which was funny to watch because they made it look like they were at home in that car. And I've seen tall men climb into like smart cars and they don't actually look comfortable climbing in, climbing out, or actually being in them because they're weird. They really handled that whole that whole here's to dad constantly thing was just great. And we like this. We go on hunts. We take one of the jets. Dad set this whole thing up for us and we like this life. It's the family business. Here's to dad. It was just a great concept of an alternate universe that I still can't figure out how it quite works outside of that microcosm.
Carole?
It was beautiful. It was just beautiful. From, the minute they stepped out and they had this air about them, where they were like used to being pampered, and they were hunters, but they had all these things, all these resources. And Dean had his cable knit sweaters, and yet he had no socks. So why was that? They couldn't afford socks. They clearly could. But he really got down into the whole, wow, all they do is like sit around and drink beer and watch porn. Why aren't we doing this? So just as our Sam and Dean could have found things to envy in the Winchesters with, their jets and everything, nonetheless, the Winchesters found things to envy about Sam and Dean, except of course Sam saying the hair is sacred. Or didn't Dean say that? Sam was like, oh, and Dean was like, the hair is sacred. So they were just delightful. The boys have to have had a blast playing that, just going like full out, let's be hilarious. And it was beautiful. It was a gift.
I can explain the socks.
Okay.
They clearly belong to a yachting club, or because there's a tradition in the spring, of course, of after the winter, as soon as you can, there's a traditional burning of the socks.
Oh dear.
Because you don't wear your socks through the spring and the summer as long as you can, because of the boat. You don't wear socks on the boat. So clearly they're from the rich set that goes boating. It's a thing, trust me.
I believe you.
I've read about it. Not from experience, but I've read about it.
Well, I absolutely loved that we've seen Jensen in real life be quite the fashionista when he has been at awards ceremonies and been for photo shoots. And we've gotten to see Dean in a tux with Bella. We've gotten to see him dressed up, fashion plate with Elliot Ness, which we'll talk about later. So, we have gotten to see Dean in more than just flannel, but it was fun to watch Dean being Dean at home in the bunker with Sam and not being in his flannel and jeans and scruffy boots and this is just how they roll. And so that was fun seeing them both be that much more of a fashionista. And so that was cool. And just watching their relationship with each other, presumably without all the trauma that our boys have gone through, was interesting, although I'm not sure you could be quite as close without all the, I went to hell, no, I went to hell, no, I sold my soul, no,
Well, perhaps not quite as close. Nonetheless, there was a very significant glance when they were talking about taking baby out for a ride, and there was like a moment. So
more of the Winchester family may have been acquainted with the back seat than we know.
Exactly.
It's true. Well, they
There-
certainly couldn't have done anything in that Fiat. When my husband, who is 6'7", he has a smart car and it has more headroom than a Range Rover. But he wanted a Fiat, but he couldn't fit in it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my husband is 6'4", and I know one time when we went looking at sports cars, there were some he couldn't even sit in without having the seat partially reclined, or else his head hit the ceiling. So yeah, not a whole lot of room to get up to much there, unless you've got a moonroof and it's open.
Then you're like Fred Flintstone.
Yeah, just the visuals are all wrong. Oh dear, folks, we went there.
Moving right along.
So moving right
Right.
along. So we've also got Endiverse Dean, which is kind of the opposite. Well, except for the thigh rig. So we've got Scruffy Dean in the Croatoan verse, running a camp, being a total badass.
In a thigh holster.
In a thigh holster, yes. So, Carole, why don't you start off on Croatoan Endiverse Dean?
Well, he had a thigh holster. So that was a big plus. However, the end Dean was certainly, he made our Dean look positively cuddly. He was just, now granted, his goal was, I'm going to keep these people alive. I'm going to keep humanity alive. We are fighting for our lives in this apocalyptic verse. And on top of that, we have Lucifer. So I can appreciate his single-minded vision. But clearly, the whole point then when he has that discussion with, you know, the beautiful dialogue, by the way, between End Dean and our Dean. Oh my gosh, Jensen just killed it. Where first he doesn't believe it, but oh my gosh, you know, who else knows about the pink panties, which, let me just say, launched an entire trope of fan fiction, okay, based just on that. Anyway, so they have this great dialogue back and forth, and in the end, of course, Dean realizes it is Sam who keeps him human. It's Sam who keeps him connected to his humanity, so that if somebody perhaps has been exposed to the Croatoan virus, he doesn't just pull his gun and nail him right on the spot. So, which was so shocking, because we would never have seen that with our Dean. So it's a wonderful performance. It's a great look at the Dean that could have been, a Dean we were so close to getting, and yet Sam was the one who was able to pull him back.
Mhm.
So it's wonderful.
In some ways, he's even harder than Purgatory Dean.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Purgatory
way
Dean
harder.
is pure. It's just hunting. But the End Dean, Croatoan Dean, doesn't have that purity because he has people to take care of. Purgatory Dean had no one to take care of.
Well,
This Dean is like, I have this small nucleus of people and I have to keep them alive. And he does.
Croatoan Dean is living in a hell of his own making, because he's the one who made the decision to not kill Sam and thinks everything that happened after is his fault.
And he
And-
made the decision not to reconcile with Sam.
Yeah.
And he's, you know, it's all my fault that all of this is happening. And he's trying to keep those people alive, but he's at the point where the angels manipulated him into doing what was going on. And now he can't even trust himself. Quite literally, he shows up from the past and he can't even tell himself what's going on. And if you can't trust yourself, who can you trust?
But Dean never trusts himself. Even
Yep.
when he plunges in thinking, I'm doing the right thing, this is what the thing that has to be done. Even then, he still doesn't trust himself. So neither Dean, I think, trusted themselves.
I don't know. I think he trusts himself an awful lot. He just goes. At times when Sam hesitates, Dean is the one that's like, I know this is what I need to do, and he just goes and does it. He sometimes regrets later, but he does what
Absolutely.
needs to be done.
But I think when he's doing that, he's doing it as a matter of reflex and instinct. He's not doing it in any kind of considered way,
Right.
you know, so
Okay.
your mileage may vary.
Melissa and Ann, what do you think?
Well, I'll jump in with I agree with both, with parts of what both of y'all said, but I have to say that the thing that strikes me a lot about Inverse Dean is that, but all of the Deans really, but particularly Inverse Dean, is that laser focus on trying to keep everybody alive, trying to figure out what to do about Sam / Lucifer. And he just, he's got those blinders on, but I think that's a form of, also, I think that's a form of self-protection. Because he's trying to, he does carry that guilt. He does blame himself for a lot of what happened. And so he puts the blinders on and says, okay, I have to do this. It's just like, okay, take care of Sammy.
Melissa?
It was really interesting to see Dean without stone number one. You know, Sam's not there, and it felt like he was plotting. It was just one foot in front of the other. The next, I gotta take care of the next problem and the next problem and the next problem. This Dean doesn't know how to laugh. He's forgotten. There's any reason for any bit of joy is just gone, and he's just, like Ann said, he's got those blinders on of, I just got to keep doing the mission. And that Dean, I would have been surprised if when they finished whatever the end game was with Lucifer, that he wouldn't have eaten a bullet at that point, because Sam's gone and he's done whatever he can do to save the people he's been trying to save, and then that's it. I think Justin did an amazing job with this.
Yeah, he did. Now, a very, very focused Dean in a different way are the Smith and Wesson incarnation. Dean Smith with his kale smoothies and his
cleanse. He was doing the cleanse.
Yes. Still kind of tightly wound here, but in a corporate different way. Elektra?
Oh, those were fun to watch. It was so not Dean, and yet it was incredibly fun to watch him with all dressed up for work and talking about, no man, I'm on a cleanse. Oh, those were silly. Sorry, and he was just so driven to do, again, focused and driven to do his job, and what's similar to that in Inverse Dean is, of course, this was completely manipulated by those dicks upstairs, the angels, yet again putting him in a position just to see what would happen. What would happen to Sam and Dean if we did this? Let's try it and see what they do. And, you know, like players on a chessboard. That was Zachariah trying to see if they could manipulate them in a certain direction, because he was still trying to get him to say yes. That was during that period of time.
Which, interestingly enough, is a microcosm of what apparently Chuck was doing all the time with all of his multiple Sams and Deans and universes. Zachariah just did it within the same universe, but apple didn't fall too far from that tree. Melissa?
I loved this Dean for lots of reasons. He was, he was having fun and seeing what Dean would have been like if Mary hadn't made her deal. way back in time. But what I loved even more is, just like with the Richchesters, our Dean starts chipping through by the end. You know, at that fight scene at the end, the veneer is wearing off, and you can see our Dean starting to shine through in places. And I thought that was, they did it in the Richchesters, but they also did it in this episode. And I thought it was a really interesting choice. And it was really cool to see that veneer starting to flake off. And I was wondered, like, whose decision was that? Because it was a brilliant one. That, like, in all of the Deans in all of the worlds, we're always going to come back to our Dean.
And
That's gosh, Melissa, I got to think about that too.
Yeah.
But it's I thought that it was such a brilliant sort of play on the old trope of It's a Wonderful Life in a way. And that Dean just, you know, what was it? Sam asked for a beer and he said, I threw them all out. And you're just going, whoa, that's not Dean. But
too many carbs.
yeah. But but the interplay between those two, as you know, as much you could see his gut reaction was, he wasn't real sure about this guy, but there was also something about Sam that really was like, oh yeah, I can trust this guy. But he didn't know why. He couldn't really fathom that in this role playing thing. And I thought that was really interesting, the way you could see it in his face a lot with the facial expressions and the way he talked to Sam. And I thought that was a really well done aspect of that role. But I just loved what you said, Melissa, about how you could see parts of our Dean starting to come through by the end of that. And I have to say that it took me seeing that episode like 3 times before I realized Smith and Wesson. Oh, Smith and Wesson. I don't know why. It did not click with me.
It's okay.
Love you, Anne.
what do you think, Carole?
Well, again, this is such a gift. And again, this whole fanfic from that one episode, Smith and Wesson is a huge fan favorite and is written about in all kinds of different ways. So boy, if this one episode wasn't enough for you, check it out, because there's a ton of Smith and Wesson fic out there. Again, I mean, from the very moment they first see each other, where Sam's like, gee, you look familiar, you know, and Dean's like, who is this guy? But nonetheless, when they start trying to put some of this together and they find they mesh so well, and they're like, wow, we didn't even know what we were doing in the beginning, but what a great team we turned out to be. Of course, you know, we see it, they didn't know why. And again, they had to have such fun doing this. We, of course, certainly enjoyed seeing Sam in the yellow polo, but Dean in his, man, the print shirts with the white collars, is there anything that screams corporate more than that? I mean, I hated that fashion when it was in fashion. But boy, does it say, I am a corporate tool. You know?
Well, and Dean is still being the good son. He is still going for that brass ring.
This is what I need to do, and I am doing it, and I'm going to keep doing it. And my goal is to be the assistant executive vice president of, you know, Bumfront, you know, Minnesota or whatever. And that's
and Sam is being the rebel. He's just walking out on the job. So
he's
yeah,
hammering his phone apart and sending the little vampire bobblehead flying.
I missed that.
I've worked in cube farms. I can relate. So now there's also the Jin verse, Dean, who got sent with the Jin into what was supposed to be his happy place. Melissa,
And it
what do you think
was.
of- and it was to a point with Beer Girl.
No, no, no. Um, you can see this one utterly stumps me. You can see that he's not happy. Like there's just that whole thing of, yeah, okay, this is my life, but there's this undercurrent of something's missing. This is wrong. This isn't really my apple pie life. And I'm surprised that it took him as long as it did to get out of this, because I was like 5 minutes in, I was like, okay, come on, let's go. That's just me.
Elektra?
I don't know. It was nice to see him smiling, and mom was there, and the only thing that was missing was the one thing that has been a stable influence in his life for the last year, which is him and Sam are each other's. They bounce ideas off each other. They've got each other's back through thick and thin. And whenever they separate, things seem to not work. And the idea that his happy place could possibly be, and him and Sam don't speak to each other, just, it jarred him so badly that he was able to figure out that this wasn't reality.
And even so, even though he and Sam didn't speak in this verse, at the end, Sam still went with him, which I thought was really interesting.
They were still brothers.
I know some brothers who wouldn't go into a dark warehouse for the other one.
Or tolerate a jar of lamb blood.
Yeah.
Right?
Carole, what do you think?
I mean, it didn't bother me that he didn't figure it out faster, because when he woke up and, here he is with this beautiful woman, and oh my God, mom's alive. Oh my God, dad was alive and he's dead, but he died a natural death. It was all he had ever dreamed of. And he was happy to just relax into that. And after, of course, we see him in seasons to come even more stressed. But even at that point, it's like he's so happy to just be able to relax and enjoy, and I'll mow the lawn and have a sandwich. And it's not until that he first sees Sam and realizes that they're estranged that the penny starts to drop. And that, that's the kicker for his whole subsequent unraveling. But up until then, he's just like, wow, what, there isn't anything for him to even begin to question.
And he's still happy for Sam that he's with Jessica, and Jessica's alive, and they're getting married. So he's still
absolutely thrilled with them, for them.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's getting to marry Jessica. She's alive. She's like, what?
He doesn't have Sam, but Sam has Jess. And
he's willing to go with that. He's willing to go with that. He cannot have Sam as long as Sam is happy with Jessica. That's fine. And it's, so it's understandable. I think it takes him a little while to put the pieces together of who is the girl haunting him, seeing the news of all these people dying. And he's like, wait a minute, we saved those people. And that he starts to, put it all together. And kudos to Sam for throwing his lot in, but it's Dean's persistence and Dean's intention that is so good that even Sam has to say, I'm going to follow along with this and see where it goes,
Okay. Anne?
Yeah, I to piggyback on what you were saying, Carol, is that it begins to unravel when I mean, it doesn't begin to unravel really until he actually sees Sam. You know, he doesn't understand when he first calls Sam that they're really as estranged as they are in this illusion. And I think up until when he has the run-in with Sam about stealing the silver, that he, you know, because I think up until then he kept thinking that, I think in the back of his head was, you know, this seems weird, but it's also what I've always wanted. And yeah, if I'm kind of not really close to Sam, but I can fix that. I think he thought he could fix it.
Right.
Until he realized about that they really were estranged. But then you have to give Sam credit for going with him. But then at the end, you know, it's also Sam who tries to talk him out of, you know, breaking out of what Dean has.
Can't you just relax here and be happy?
Yeah.
So we also have, from an AU time travel perspective, Sam with Elliot Ness. And boy, can he dress. Dean, sorry. Dean with Elliot Ness, and boy, can he dress well.
I just love when she just grabs him by those lapels and plants one on there.
Because don't you want to be her?
Always. I'm sorry, were you starting with me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, start. Go ahead.
Well, it's really fun. We get to see Dean be really fangirling over a hero of his. He's, you know, he thinks Elliot Ness is the bee's knees, to borrow a phrase from that time. And so he's very excited to be with him and, you know, go out with him, and he's all duded up. And I mean, Dean loves a good costume. Of course, we know Jensen loves a good costume, but Dean also loves a good costume. So he doesn't mind being all duded up. He you know, he knows he looks sharp, and he enjoys it. And I think it's a bit of a comeuppance when Elliot Ness is like, what is everyone such a Nancy Pants where you are? Because like, suck it up, dude. This is a job, and you do it, and you don't, you know, get emotionally involved and all of this. And it's a bit of a slap in the face for Dean at first, but he kind of takes a little bit of that into him. And I think it's a tool for him, because if he does get emotionally involved all the time, it's going to destroy him, you know. And he does have to learn to put up a bit of a wall and distance himself a little bit. He doesn't want to lose his humanity as he did in Croatoan days, but on the other hand, he can't be a total empath either and feel everything, or he's going to be flayed, you know. And Elliot Ness is like, buck up, dude. You know, take it on the chin and move on.
Okay. Elektra?
You know, in and amongst all the fangirling there, the pricelessness of Elliot Ness coming in to question him. And first there's the fangirling of, oh my God, you're Elliot Ness. And then there's the, wait, you believe me, you're a hunter. And the realization that one of his heroes was a hunter, and that just blowing his mind. And the, wait, no, I'm also a hunter. And the realization that, okay, Elliot Ness, he's a hunter. He'll believe that I'm a time traveler. And then the two of them just banging it all out, and they're, okay, and now we're working together. And they're, wait, what's wrong with my clothes? And then it's just the fast pace after that, once they get it all ironed out, because, well, they're on the same page, and they've got the same references. They might be from different times, but they're doing the same job. And it's that episode is one that just sits right close to my heart, because I I love the way they put it together, and I love how fast paced it is. And I love Sam and Jody working on the one side and Elliot Ness and Dean working on the other side. And yeah, and I do love Dean in a nicely cut suit.
And I'm still laughing because the real Elliot Ness was 27 when he busted Al Capone. And we're so used to seeing him portrayed so much older in all of the TV shows. But yeah, only 27. And
Well, I don't have too much to add. It's a delightful episode in so many ways. We get Jody back. We get Jensen doing this great transition where he gets to work with his hero, and he adapts to the time period with the clothes so well, and he figures out how to leave Sam a message. And that was so
brilliant.
He sort of bullied his way into this poor guy's house, and lays down on the floor and stuff. I just thought that was really great, and it was and the whole idea of the time traveling God guy was interesting too to me. Kronos, yeah.
Kronos, yeah.
So
I
anyway.
kept wondering if they had watched the movie Frequency with Dennis Quaid, because the whole leaving the message in the floorboard kind of thing was very much part of that, crossing time streams. So, Melissa.
I'm so glad that everybody talked about Jensen's acting and what happened in the episode, because I'm sorry, Jensen in a period suit. I'm sure it was a great performance. I wouldn't know, because Jensen in a period suit. I have literally watched this episode probably half a dozen times, several of them with the thing on mute, just because Jensen in this period suit. I don't care about
And a
anything
fedora.
And
Seriously, come on. So that's my addition to the conversation.
So we've also got Dean posing in different jobs at different times. He was a chef in The Purge. We always believe he's been a mechanic somewhere, but I think that's mostly in fan fiction. Although he certainly
Well, he can take his car apart and put it back together.
And what's to say he didn't work for Bobby some of the times, there when Bobby needed an extra hand. He ran Rocky's Bar, which is yet another AU when he was locked in his mind. And he worked construction with Lisa. So what about all these other non-hunter Deans?
Can I ask about a Dean we didn't see?
Yeah.
There's the Dean who was wanted for a whole bunch of crimes, mostly beheadings, in the alternate universe where Dad comes from the 70s into the present time.
Mm-hmm.
In Lebanon.
Killer Dean. Yeah.
When he skips forward, and Sam stays in school and becomes a lawyer, and Dean is a hunter with Dad, presumably, or no, Dean is a hunter on his own, and because Dad has disappeared.
Yeah.
And Dean is apparently off out there hunting and beheading a lot of vamps and other things. And that one we don't see, but apparently he's very, very focused and he hasn't been caught, but he is on the FBI's most wanted list.
Again,
There's got to be fanfic about that.
I think there is.
There should be.
There's certainly a ton of serial killer Dean.
Yeah.
And then the both of them being serial killers.
Yeah. Anne and Melissa, anything to add on those alternates or jobs?
Well, with the jobs, I really, I guess my headcanon is that he did work with Bobby, and, because all the work he always did on Baby, just, he had to keep his chops up doing that. somehow. And that would be the kind of job he could pick up if they needed money once he got a little bit older, while Stan was still in school and stuff. He could pick up that kind of a job. Construction work is the same sort of thing. You know, if he got a construction job, he didn't have to, you know, a GED was probably all he needed. And so any of those non-hunter jobs that he did, that we saw him do, I think were, you know, were just another facet of Dean doing what he had to do. And he was focused on, okay, either he had to make money to support Sam, or Sam was gone. He was going to be with Lisa, but he couldn't sit at home all day. So construction, you know, was a good thing to do. You know, we saw at the very end where he had a job application on his desk before they went to the barn. I
I
don't
don't
know
even
that
know what that was.
No.
Wasn't it-
Law
wasn't
enforcement.
it- Yeah, it was examined very, very closely by people who have higher resolution screens than I do. And yeah, it was either like law enforcement or firemen or something of a rescuing nature,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
which is of course something he'd always said he wanted to do. And of course, being a law enforcement would tie right into his character. But certainly, I think all those construction mechanic, chef, you know, in a diner, I don't mean chef like woo, but you know, short order cook, were all kinds of jobs that they could be in any town. He could pick up, he could do it. He could work for 3 days or 3 months and make some money, and there they go, you know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
'cause he was so competent at them.
Well,
And
I
that's a
said-
real staple in fanfic.
Yeah.
Ditto what everybody else said. There's one job that he didn't have that I always wondered why we never see him do it, because it's another one of those things that fits in with his skills. Why was he never working with a gunsmith in a gun shop?
Oh.
We see him we see him field strip, okay, putting together a
Because-
1911 is not
Because of
easy.
the
I've done it.
required background checks. They're even more fussy about background checks in people working around weapons. I assumed when he was working construction that he was probably doing day labor,
Exactly, yes.
because he was on the FBI's wanted list.
Mm.
And he
Well,
had
and he
a
probably wasn't
low
working under
profile.
Dean. He probably wasn't working under Dean Winchester either.
He's probably working
Exactly.
under, was Frank already in the picture by then?
No, wait a minute.
No, but they still had all, you know, he was probably just like Dean Smith, Dean Jones, Gene, you know,
Yeah.
Gene Brown, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be careful about that stuff.
Yeah, I can see that with the gun thing. Yeah, definitely.
So we also got to see Dean grow up naturally over the course of 15 seasons. And the more mature Dean in 12, 13, 14, 15 is very different from the reckless young guy in seasons, you know, the early seasons in some ways. But then in the curious case of Dean Winchester, we also got to see him turn into Chad Everett and be a geezer. So geezer Dean, or just mature Dean. Any thoughts on that?
Well, Chad Everett was a silver fox, let me just say. Which, thank you, at least, you know, if Dean was going to be that age, Dean was definitely going to be a silver fox. And we can only look forward to the days as Jensen continues to mature like the fine wine he is, and we will arrive there. But yes, Chad Everett embodied Dean. We've talked about, you know, how Ridge and all these boys played Dean, young Dean, so well. Oh my God, Chad Everett, he took mature Dean and just, it was wonderful. He had every bit of Dean's joie de vivre, and, you know, I'm eating my bacon cheeseburgers and I'm hitting on the girls and all this stuff. And then he's like, oh my God, what is this? My body's like, it's acid reflux. and he can't go up, 8 flights of stairs and stuff. And it was wonderful because Chad Everett didn't just be an older person, he was a younger person in an older person's body, and he did not understand what the limitations of that body were. And man, he knocked it, and it was just so good. I adored that entire episode. Now, I'm old enough, I remember Chad Everett as being the young hunky doctor in medical center. Okay, and he was the heartthrob, and oh my goodness, I had to watch that every week because he was such,
Okay, just
What,
a
Dr.
question.
Say?
How many of us remember that? Okay, yeah. So just
and he's a terrific actor. He's just and he really embodied, I felt, that whole sense of, here's Dean trying to live as large as he always does, and then like realizing that his body literally can't take that. And then
Yeah.
of course we have the very heart-to-heart talk with Bobby, when Bobby's like, you know what, I have the bullet and I don't eat it because I told you I wouldn't, and so on. And that's a really poignant and meaningful scene. But just also the whole thing, and and then in the end Dean comes out and he's kicking up his heels because he's his regular age again. And it's just such a wonderful moment, and it's a wonderful episode.
And of course, in that period, Jared had actually played some competitive poker and won. So there was also kind of an in-joke there where he's playing poker for Dean's life and Bobby's life and all of that.
I love it when the witch is like, very nice, very method.
Yes. So we are actually coming to the end of the hour. So last comments on mature and older Dean before we do our wrap up. Anyone else have something to add on that? All right. Well, once again, we have blown through our time, and there's always more to talk about. But thank you all so much for being here. And let's go around and let everybody know where to find you online, starting with you, Ann.
You can find me on Facebook as Ann Wicker, and you can also find me on Twitter as Ann Wicker with no spaces, and on Instagram as Ann.Wicker2.
Okay. Melissa.
You can find me on the Supernatural TFWNC Facebook group that you moderate, being snarky and or stalking my favorite writers on AO3.
Very good. Elektra?
You can find me at www.untilmidnight.com, where you can find everything about me and links to go all the places.
Nice. Carole?
I'm on Twitter as true_firesign10. All my fanfic is on AO3 as firesign10. I'm also on WordPress as firesign10. And of course, as Carole Stokes, I'm here on Facebook for Continual and TFWNC.
And you can find me online at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. The rest of the social media is some variation of that. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group, but mostly you can find me here on Continual. Well, folks, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more Supernatural coming up, so stay tuned. We'll see you online.